Committee on Wednesday, September 12th. We have all members except for Heather, who will not be able to be here tonight. Is there any public comment from the public? There'll be no public comment from public. We have two sets of minutes that have been sent out for August 8th and August 22nd. Any comments or corrections on August 8th?
Those were the ones you sent?
The ones I sent out, yeah.
No.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so August 22nd, sent out by Mark.
The only thing that I noted was that in the discussion about the Lunenburg Housing Authority, I didn't say that they didn't meet anymore. It was that they didn't seem to be doing what the charter identified them as doing.
Okay. My notes weren't real clear in that section.
I was probably mumbling during that section, so
I
it was late.
went back to my notes and then I went to the charter to see what was in the charter, and then I went out to the website to look at their agenda and minutes.
Yep.
And they haven't posted minutes in 2 years, and they've only met twice so far this year.
Is that on the new website? Is that on the new website?
Well, no, they have a website.
No, with the minutes. You went to the town website?
Yeah.
So there is a problem with the town website for the conversion from the old website to the new website. So every department's minutes and agendas did not transfer over. Because I've actually looked at their minutes, and they've actually been meeting. They meet on a regular basis.
Yeah, they do meet regularly, and actually where I found them wasn't on the Lunenburg page. It was through public housing. It was basically, it's a separate, it was like a separate website, and it was, but for the most part, their agenda and minutes that I was reading seemed to be pretty localized to White Street.
Maintaining that property, right?
Yeah.
So I would say that the Housing Authorities mentioned the charter. If they're not continuing some of the required duties, we should amend the charter accordingly. But
I haven't heard anything more back from them. I still haven't heard back from them.
If they're not following the charter, we should amend the charter accordingly?
Right.
Does that work?
Or we should find out whether they should be reporting to the Board of Selectmen and on, any studies or anything available through...
Well, it's an elected body.
Right. It's an elected body, and if they're basically determining what the needs of the town are in terms of housing, reportable housing, then it would be... we would hear from them. So, that was all.
I should hear from them. I'm not sure we'll just do it to the planning board, to us, to the town meeting. I don't know.
Yeah, me either. I just have not seen anything.
So I think there's two issues.
Yes.
One is, what should the minutes reflect? And the other, what should the charter reflect?
Right. And I think the minutes should reflect. I don't think we talked about taking it out of making that change at the time. I think all I said at the time was, and maybe somebody else remembers it differently, was just that I didn't get a sense from their minutes that they were doing what the charter says they were developed to do. And I just had a question about that. So it was really just brought up as information more as...
So just for the point of information, so the charter currently says the Housing Authority shall make studies of the housing needs of the community and shall provide programs to make available housing for families of low income and for elderly persons of low income. Shall have other such duties as given by general laws. So they're clearly doing the provide programs to make housing available for low income and for elderly persons. The question becomes, make studies of housing needs of the community. I think they do that at the time when they apply for funding, but they certainly don't do it on a regular basis. So, do you have the proposed change for what Terry feels comfortable that she said?
So what I put is, Housing Authority is mentioned in the charter. If they're not following the charter, we should amend the charter accordingly.
I mean, that's fine if that's how the meeting ended up. I'm good. I'm just saying that basically my part of it was just, I just brought it out. I don't remember there being a discussion about changing the charter. And there could have been, but it was late.
Yeah, I don't think we talked about changing the charter. Maybe we did, but I know you said exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Your point was, you said, I don't think they're doing what it says, from what you could tell.
Right. But then I still also, and again, I still have not heard back from anybody that I wrote to, so.
We should consider amending the charter as opposed to we should amend the charter. That would,
Okay?
yeah. Any other questions on the minutes? Motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So, this is going to be a shorter meeting tonight because the folks that we had invited to come talk about the voting requirements for write-in candidates didn't get back to me until the agenda was posted. They can't make it tonight, so they're going to be coming the next meeting. And I've also confirmed that Nathan Lockwood will be able to come to the next meeting as well to talk about ranked choice voting, so we can get both voting discussions in the same night. So we'll have that. And I was not able to get the updated version of the charter as a result of the various things we've been discussing so far, but I will get that out this week, so it'll be well in advance of the next meeting. As a result of some of the discussion you've had and looking at the minutes, comments, questions on substantive discussions that we've already had, things that we need to have additional discussions other than the items that we'll continue to do?
I just have a suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we've talked about going forward is with those items that we're planning to potentially bring language change on, that it would be good to have a, this is why we should, and this is why we shouldn't. And I think that anybody who feels strongly about the appointment of the town clerk or the select board versus selectmen, if at this point, if someone volunteers to start the ball rolling by saying, yeah, you know what, I want to write a pro and I want to write a con, and then we can bring those forward and maybe discuss those and edit them and maybe shape our discussion that way.
That's good.
It's just a thought, but it's like, I mean, I can make that recommendation because I'm pretty ambivalent about everything.
Oh, so you're not going to be writing either side? Is that what you're saying?
I'll be happy to, but I don't know if I can make a strong argument either way, so.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Strongly about it.
No, I think that's good. So is anyone interested in writing something up, suggesting maximum of approximately 250 words, trying to keep it short? We can see how that works. Pro or con, select board?
I'm absolutely down for the pro.
All
I
right.
knew you would be. I'm with you. We're like the only ones that care about it. Nobody else seems to care.
Anybody want to?
Well, I think I'm coming down on pro, but
Okay.
basically
Good to have
it's, but it's also because I think the argument, well, I mean, if somebody wants to make an argument against it.
The arguments against make you for it, is that what you're saying?
There is no argument against it, that's what makes me for it.
It's always been that way.
A public
Right.
hearing, there was a lot of argument against it.
Well, it was
But it was,
also,
the argument was, we've always done it this way.
Yeah.
There's no need to change it, so why change it?
Right,
That was
and-
the argument.
right, and it's like basically who is harmed if we do one way or the other. And so, yeah, that was just the way I was looking at it. So yeah, I think I did kind of go from, I don't really care to, yeah, okay. For the change.
So anybody want to vote against, write up against the change? Because if not, we can seek public.
Yeah, we can find somebody,
Yeah.
somebody else who might be willing to do that.
And clerk, pro for appointed?
I hold that position, but I don't have to be the one that writes it if somebody else does, but I'll take a stab at it.
Okay, that's good. I can give you some feedback. Sure. Anybody against?
I think I'm the only one that's against that, right? Based on the voting.
So thank you for volunteering.
Right, unless there's somebody in the public it would make sense to have done
We can certainly,
that argument
you can
forward.
certainly.
Yeah, and I'm more than happy to see that somebody's got a passion and wants to do it.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Okay. So Michael, you get to do one for and one against. I think those are the two most controversial ones, because we've eliminated a lot of the ones that people...
Cool, right, well, we could, I mean, I don't know if it makes sense, I think we can assume that it's not controversial to go to a second town meeting, I don't know.
I don't think that
But
was.
that's one of the changes.
The
so-
controversy on that had to do with,
There were two things.
okay, go ahead.
One was the fact that we were calling it a second annual.
Right.
And the issue of the word annual triggers a lot of things that have to be done once a year. That was one thing town council raised. And the second thing was whether this was considered a special town meeting, we didn't want to require all the extra bells and whistles that a special town meeting requires, like 100 signatures to get something on the warrant, that type of thing. So I think that needs to be clear, but I don't know.
It'd probably just go spring town meeting, fall town meeting.
Well, no, it would just be annual town meeting and second town meeting. I mean, in most other towns, it's...
But we should address whether it carries with it the requirements of an ATM or an STM, which are different.
And I think some of it's also notice requirements. I think
Right.
there's more notice requirements, longer for ATM too. All right, I will take it upon myself to ask town council for proposed language addressing those, and that may make it not controversial, and we may just have a "here's why we're doing it" statement as opposed to a pro and con statement.
Okay, but, well, I guess the question would go to, does this group have consensus that we're talking about a second town meeting as an annual second town meeting, so it would have the ATM requirements?
I think it depends on what answer comes back for me.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what the requirements are, what the differences are.
Okay.
Let me just test something. I think we had consensus that being on record that we're going to have 2 a year was a good thing, because then people didn't feel like they had to get everything on the one that they know we're going to have.
Right.
I don't think we have consensus on whether to follow the rules of one version versus the other. Is that fair?
I thought it was 2 town meetings that were going to be normal. You could still have a special town meeting if you needed one.
Right. That was...
That could be any time. The whole reason for the fall town meeting was because that's basically the budget. Generally, every year we have to do one anyway, because the budget numbers finally come in.
The finalization.
And they have to do that. So instead of making a special town meeting, just make it a regular town meeting format, so that people then could figure out the bylaws and spread them out. But you would still be able to hold a special town meeting anytime you wanted. There's like dates for those.
I think the controversy came up with when somebody noticed saying that, well, at the special annual town meeting, which is what I think we called it originally, it was going to be a higher burden for people to get something on the agenda. And I don't think we had agreed to that, so.
Yeah, and I think that just might have been a miscommunication along the way, because I think I had also I had never understood it to be a special fall town meeting. I always had understood it to be a second town meeting. So.
All right, I'll communicate with town council on that.
Okay, so if we don't have to write anything pro or con about that.
Depending on what comes out of that, we might, but probably not. And then we'll hold off on pro and con on the ranked choice voting, if we're going to even go forward with it, or a minimum number of signatures, until we actually hear from the parties next meeting.
Now, the other item that was controversial, but I'm not sure if it's going to result in any change, was that whole the whole discussion around management of employees that support committees. who report on a day-to-day basis to the town manager, but support an elected body.
So
And I think there was a lot of pushback from the elected bodies on what do we really mean by policy versus day-to-day and all that stuff. But I don't know where we came down in terms of...
So the thing we've come down is we took out the language that the boards will not be involved in day-to-day. We left the language that's in there already, which is not clear, but what we added didn't help anything. I do think I think we agreed that we were still going to go back and talk about the employees that are hired by elected boards. So for instance, planning and sewer are appointed by the town manager, subject to ratification of those two elected boards. So the sewer business manager and the planning director are appointed by the town manager subject to the sewer commission and the planning board, respectively. What's not clear is how do you deal with personnel issues and if you had to fire one of those two people. It's not clear whether it's just a reverse of the hiring process, where the town manager does it ratified by the board, or does she have the authority to do it just under its nature? So I think, that's where that part is a clear unknown. The other elected position that has a hired is the Board of Health, but that's not appointed by the town manager. That's appointed by the Board of Health. That's slightly different. And we didn't do anything with that position.
And there's at least one that reports to an appointed board as opposed to an elected board, and that would be PAC. I can't think of others.
Well, you've got PAC, you've got Conservation.
Right.
What other committees have staff? I think that's it. Actually, Housing Authority. Library, that's right, library. Well,
Library trustees are elected,
is
right?
elected.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
So they go more towards sewer and planning.
Yeah.
Although that one is different because the charter specifically states the library trustee appoints the library director. That the town manager is not named.
They just get mucked up a bit when it gets below that level.
Well, what we came up with was the language of that they need to follow state and town bylaws, so that one probably won't be an issue on that part.
My guess would be if we do a good job of working that and including the elected and appointed boards, it's not a controversial change to the charter.
Right.
It's maybe cleaning up some language or maybe putting a side comment someplace that says this is what we meant and leaving the language the way it is. I don't know.
This one we clearly stated we had more work to do.
Right. But it may not be a charter change.
Right. It may or may not, but we need to have more dialogue with those two boards specifically. So.
Who's working with those boards?
Who had planning? And who
I have planning. Planning was good with the changes.
Okay.
No, I think it accurately reflected a better, clarified the dynamic. So, but I think it was sewer and cemetery that were...
Well, cemetery is different because they don't have an employee that is appointed by them. It's
By the DPW?
It's DPW. Because
That was the issue with the cemetery.
Yeah.
Right. And then Parks had an issue because...
Well, park and cemetery are the same because they don't hire, the charter does not provide that the town manager appoints subject to their ratification. That's what's different between those and the sewer and the planning. There's a budget that's in DPW and they use that position to do the day-to-day administration, which is under the town manager.
No, I'm talking about when they have to hire people for the beach and other stuff. I think they have, whether they have to hire, I don't know that they hire umpires or anything like that, but they do hire for the beach.
Okay, so I'm hearing an employment session discussion.
And well, that was why they took issue with the language added, was because it clearly went against what was said in the previous paragraph about they will hire
Right, right.
they do hire, so.
So since we've taken that language out...
And they don't really have staff. I mean, other than that, which is not helpful, because I think it was my understanding that the DPW didn't have a staff person who was responsible for parks and stuff, so.
They just take care of the parks.
Right, but when something gets broken, it's just not on there. Like, nobody notices, so.
So I think we should have one portion of a meeting, we will just talk about employment. I will talk to the town manager for trying to structure that meeting, as well as town council possibly. Other sections?
This doesn't fall necessarily into controversial or writing positions, but we were talking about it as the meeting started, the filling of vacancies. It came up on the Finance Committee. It's the conflict we see between an attempt to have a broad posting and an open process to encourage applicants for either filling vacancies on elected bodies or appointed bodies, or for that matter even employees, but I'm not sure, there's only one of them that deals with that, versus the language in the charter that talks to who's the appointing authority and how long they have to make those decisions and how they work together. So what I did today, and I don't know if you want to deal with it tonight or make it a future agenda, so I went through the whole charter and I just made note of any chapter or section that referred to filling vacancies. Some are silent on the posting and or appointing process, and some very clearly have either an appointing process or a selecting, a recruiting process, and some are in conflict with each other. So I just wanted to kind of put those on the table, and I think it's an easy fix, and I don't think it's controversial, but we do have occasions where they conflict, and the one example was the Finance Committee. So I don't know if you want to do that now or later.
When you just, we won't be really discussing much, but just raise once you talk about the different sections to look at that.
Okay, now if you do it in numerical order, the first one doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's 2.2, and it talks about the assistant town moderator. And the reason I bring it up is because later on, it talks to filling a vacancy in the moderator, and it refers back to 2.2. So, and it comes first because it's the lowest number of the bunch, but it's an anomaly. But it is the first one.
So 2.2 is presiding officer of town meeting, and so the town moderator is there, and then the town moderator shall appoint a deputy moderator to serve as acting moderator in the event of temporary absence.
And then later on one of these that I've noted, it says if there's a vacancy in the town moderator, and it refers to 2.2 and then has additional verbiage, so that's why I noted that one. The first real kind of one that fits what we're talking about is 2.3.
Committees. You're talking about the town moderator shall appoint for fixed terms the members of such committees of the town meeting,
right,
standing, special or standing, as may be time to time established. So that is those only committees would be established pursuant to an article.
right.
Okay?
Okay. Then the next one is 3.1.
Elected officials.
F, 1, 2, 3.
Filling a vacancy. So So it's filling the vacancies of elected positions, that's what this one is.
Correct.
Yeah. So, if there's a failure to elect a town officer, at this point, the only two officers we have is the town moderator and the town clerk. But it doesn't say the town moderator. So if there's a vacancy in the town clerk, the selectmen shall appoint until the next election. And two, multiple member body. If there's a failure to elect or a vacancy occurs, the remaining members of the multiple member body shall forthwith give notice of such vacancy to the selectmen and to the public in accordance to 710. The selectmen with the remaining members shall, after 1 week's notice of the date of the meeting, will do a joint vote. Okay? So that one, theoretically, the membership of the remaining members give notice. Quite often people, I've seen it a couple ways, people will give notice to the town clerk, sometimes they give it to the committee. But there's no provision of what happens if they don't forward the notice to the selectmen.
And the reference to 710 gets tricky because there's at least one opinion that 710 only applies to employees and not to committees. But we'll get there when we get there.
Okay.
But there is a reference to 710 in F2.
Well, let's go right to 710, just say
Okay.
elected position. Notice of vacancy. Whenever a vacancy occurs in any town office, which would be elected, position, or employment, the appointing authority shall forthwith cause public notice of vacancy to be posted in town bulletin board for not less than 10 days. Description of the duties, desirable qualifications, no permanent appointment to fill until 14 days following the date of such notice was posted to permit reasonable consideration of all applicants. So, the appointing authority shall cause public notice. So if we think of an elected vacancy, effectively the appointing authority is the joint of the selectmen and the remaining members of the committee.
Unless it's the Finance Committee.
Well, no.
Right,
No, but
just staying with the elected, just
Okay,
staying with the
okay,
elected.
okay.
But that's
Right,
a different one though.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because the one that was questioned was 7.8F.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think the issue, reference to 710, the issue becomes the appointing authority. Because what we end up doing is, I believe the town manager posts an ad in the Ledger, is what I've seen, for a vacancy on a certain elected position. So the town manager is effectively giving the notice on behalf of the two joint boards. So the question becomes, does appointed authority equal two joint boards? I'm going to get this to town council. Okay. So that's elected.
Okay.
So what's after 3-1?
32D.
3-2D. Wow. So this is the selectmen's appointments. So this one doesn't talk about vacancies, it's just the initial appointment or reappointment.
Yep.
Then,
8C. That's the one that I think, oh, that was in this one.
that's town moderator.
Right, that's it, but it does say something about,
Vacancy. Event of vacancy of the office of the deputy moderator, as designated in section 2-2, shall perform the duties until the election of successor. So this assumes that the town moderator has done what the town moderator should do by appointing the deputy moderator, and not just at each town meeting.
right. But when you go back to 2.2, it says the town moderator appoints it at the town meeting, and it's kind of ratified by the town meeting.
Right,
So that person's the kind of the first replacement until you hold another election.
I have a note that says selectmen appoint at first meeting for the year. The deputy. We discussed this at some point, and my note says selectmen appoint at the first meeting.
is that what the moderator asked us to do? What was
I
that
think
letter?
he did. I think that was,
Did he wanted the selectman to appoint, or he wanted to appoint?
I think, if I recall, well, he probably has the notes. But I do recall that there was a recommendation from the town moderator to make a change to that.
Right.
And for the board of selectmen to have some duties with it.
Charter envisions a duty every spring to serve in the moderator's absence for the year.
For the year.
But I cannot solicit a deputy for an uncertain date. So what happens? He's afraid they get appointed at the first town meeting for the year.
Okay.
But since the date changes, he can't ask people in advance to be at that meeting
With a guarantee.
with a guarantee that they can be there and serve the year. So he was asking, since I cannot solicit a deputy for an uncertain date, I have not followed this provision. When I'm aware of a conflict, I find a replacement. It makes sense for the Board of Selectmen to have the authority. I would expect most moderators would still assist to find a replacement. And then delete the language noting the town clerk as a default moderator. So I think what he was looking for was the selectmen to, with the assistance of the town moderator, to come up with a deputy moderator. Not at the town meeting, but probably at whatever is appropriate to do.
So we need more work on this.
Well, I would think too, if you have a deputy town moderator, the function isn't just the meeting. So if you identify somebody at the beginning of the year to be the deputy moderator, if that person is not available to be on whatever committees that, like say again, the finance committee appointing committee is chaired by the moderator.
Somewhere I read today that the only duties they get as the deputy is the town meeting
It's
part.
just the running
Just the
meeting.
town meeting part.
Yeah.
I forget where I read that, but I read
It's
that.
not a successor to the moderator.
Right.
Okay, so it's not, so if he was unavailable because of whatever reason, then we wouldn't be able to meet the obligation of filling a finance committee vacancy anyway. He was not-
I'm sure town council has some proposed language on this.
Yeah, that would be
because
good.
Every town has this issue.
Yeah.
Okay?
Next one is 4.1. And I forget where, because that's 4.1, where? Chief Administrator.
It's probably the screening committee. I think that's where you have the appointing of the town manager.
I don't know why I grabbed that, because it's somewhere they must say every vacancy.
A vacancy in the office of the town manager shall be filled as soon as possible. The selectman shall appoint a qualified town administrative officer or employee as a temporary manager to manage until the new town manager is appointed.
Okay, so that And then the next one is 44C.
I'm sorry, Jimmy, what was that?
44C.
Which basically says the same thing, that you're going to, any vacancy of the office of the town manager shall be filled as soon as possible by the Board of Selectmen, but pending such regular requirements.
So this is the acting town manager.
For temporary absence, that's different from...
No, but they're a little further down, I think it says something.
Unplanned temporary absence, in the event of emergency absence, the select board may appoint a qualified town officer to serve until the town manager shall return. So 44A is the town manager does a letter saying, I'm appointing something while I'm out of duty, I'm unavailable. And if it's unplanned, the selectmen do that.
But then C, it says vacancy. Any vacancy in the office of town manager shall be filled as soon as possible by the Board of Selectmen, but pending such regular appointment, the Board of Selectmen shall appoint a qualified town administrative officer or employee to perform the duties of the office on an active basis.
I have a note that I think we were going to delete that because it was already in 4.1.
Well, we did delete it, but it's still on the one that's in the charter, is what I'm just saying.
Right.
We deleted it from this working copy.
We did, because I don't have that in my version.
I don't have it deleted in my version.
See?
What is this?
We were going to delete C because that's a duplicate of 4.1.
That's my notes, that's what my notes say.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not in my...
Okay, but the one on the website is still there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the next one is 7-8F, and that's the one that specifically deals with the finance committee.
Well, that's the one that,
Mhm.
where the issue is, it doesn't...
Oh, we'll call my
it's
notes
not-
on that section. I think we talked about that one a lot.
8F, so whenever a vacancy shall occur in the membership of a multiple member body, now this is not elected,
Right.
the remaining members shall forthwith give written notice of such vacancy to its appointing authority. If at the expiration of the 30 days following delivery of such notice to the appointing authority, said officer or multiple member body has not appointed some person to fill the vacancy, the remaining members of the multiple member body shall fill such vacancy for the remainder of the unexpired term. So,
And that's the one where I believe you're in conflict between, well, you're not necessarily in conflict, but you could cause a conflict with a broad search for candidates versus a time crunch to appoint.
And that was, I think, one of the reasons why I didn't read it as finance committee, just because
Yeah.
because I see it as ad hoc, and you first have to have the school committee identify who's going to do it and who's going to sit in for the Board of Selectmen. So I just didn't.
Well, that's true. I mean, that
So,
particular committee is put together as needed.
Right.
but that one I think doesn't follow for, so, all right, so where's the finance committee?
It doesn't talk to the finance committee. This was what the appointing committee was, this is what the challenge was.
Right, but where is the finance committee appointing process?
It's up at the very beginning at,
Under the finance committee?
yeah,
Which one is that? 3? Is it 3?
2-3?
2-3, I think.
3.
Okay, finance committee. There shall be a finance committee shall consist of 7 members appointed for 3 years. The members shall be appointed by a committee of a member of the selectmen, school committee, and the town moderator. So that's the appointing authority.
And then 7-8F is the general provision for multi-member bodies, and that covers the filling of the vacancy.
Right.
Yeah. So you have to read the two together, the way the charter is written as well.
And I think the point Terry was making is that that's not a standing appointing authority, so you have to wait for the selectmen and the school board to meet to choose a member.
Well, my point was primarily that, one, I didn't read it as prior to the finance committee anyway, because I've been on the finance committee for 6 years, and I don't know how much time we went with, like a vacancy, because we had a vacancy, and,
Well, we had a vacancy and no interest.
Right.
There were no candidates to fill
Right.
the position. Had there been candidates, they would have been filled.
Right.
So,
Yes.
So one of the way to handle this is to have, it doesn't say it has to be done each time there's a vacancy. So I would propose that every year in June, the selectmen appoint a member of the Board of Selectmen, the school committee appoints a member of the school committee to this committee.
We've
So
had
it-
people leave in the middle.
So it's, and then you reappoint them. So you always have a committee that's established that could be called into order.
Okay. But
The other-
you still can, that helps.
Now,
Yeah.
but it's still a 30-day issue.
But then it's also, at what point does it go back to the appointing authority? So if we have a vacancy, there's no interest, then all of a sudden the talent bank form shows up, but it's 60 days after the notice of vacancy, or after the
Right.
vacancy. Then who is the appointing authority at that point? Is it the committee?
But interaction with no,
And what's the rush? I mean, certainly you don't want it to sit vacant if there's candidates for too long.
yeah.
But by the same token, what's the rush? I mean, I know you made the point halfway through the process that you really would prefer not to appoint
I personally would not want to appoint.
somebody that's going to be a peer and part of your
Yeah.
committee. You'd rather have an appointing,
Right.
another group appoint,
Yeah.
But what's the rush? If the rush is only if you have a pool of candidates, I would.
So not knowing the history on this one specifically, but I would say this is a charge to the appointing authority, don't sit on this, as opposed to there not being positions. So that I don't like the committee, I don't like the pool of candidates, so we're not going to vote to fill this.
Well, it was also, I think it was also a notice to me that, I should have sent a notice of vacancy to the moderator.
Because you had notice of it,
Right.
or to that committee, to the
Well,
board.
I was in denial for
I
the
think
longest
there's-
time.
there's
So,
three
like,
factors.
Mark actually said, that was his last minute meeting. and he had-
Frankly, there's three factors. One is the notification,
Yep.
and that I think is a responsibility issue. The standing committee, I think that's both of them are within the control of the boards, the multiple body boards,
Right.
whatever they are. The one that I'm concerned with is the pool of candidates. There are occasions that Mark refers to where there's no candidates, so there you're kind of like, first candidate comes along, you want to act to fill the thing. The opposing side is you have many candidates, and you want to make sure that everybody that wants to be a candidate is included.
And that you effectively hire the best candidate for the position. So, if you took out the 30 days, the concern is they could theoretically sit on it, but I don't think you have a 30-day period anywhere else. If anything, we've tried to extend the period so that there's plenty of time for people to apply. And if you've got the notice, advertising, getting that on, right away, that's almost 3 weeks.
Well, it also says that if somebody, so that's an appointed committee, so if you have a vacancy on Parks Commission, no, that's elected. If you have a vacancy on Conservation, and you guys don't do that within 30 days, then, because you're the appointing authority, then the Conservation Committee picks their, and then again, the question for me comes back to, well, at what point does it go back?
So if it 30 days, but there's no candidate,
Right.
does it go back forever? So I've got
And who is basically, do we assume, because there's no mention of talent bank anywhere, that in the charter, as the method of notifying that we have a candidate available, who do you identify as, who do you go to find out that somebody's applied?
Well, I think, is there anything in here, because I think our policies say something different too. Do you get to look at that part on the appointing?
Nothing.
So that's the one we need to look at too, because I think what we've intended to do is that when there's a vacancy, we don't just go to the talent bank. We actually announce that there's a vacancy, and there's some outreach there too, so you try to get some more people.
Right.
And you don't just go with Talent Bank. Talent Bank may go do something good.
But ultimately, whatever outreach we use, we encourage people as a result of that outreach to fill out a talent bank. So that is, at some point,
That's a mechanism.
that's how you define candidates, is somebody that's filling one out.
But say nobody says they want to be on the finance.
Right, is the clock running during that period?
Does the clock stop until there's a candidate? So that it doesn't go back until there's a candidate.
Right.
Till at least there's a candidate involved, and then if the candidate came out and it was chosen not to appoint that, then it was like, does that reset the clock?
Right.
I wouldn't read it, that the clock stops at all.
Oh, I don't know, it doesn't right now, but I'm just saying.
Right, so that
We
means
should.
that basically at some
Yeah, we
point,
should
yeah, the
in this
finance
portion.
appointing committee wouldn't be able to, or actually, and the Board of Selectmen wouldn't be able to make any other appointments if they missed the 30 days.
And in fact,
I almost would prefer, and this just came to me, that the process be open-ended, but that the multiple member body that has the vacancy can trigger some clock if they believe that the appointing authority isn't acting.
And that might be what the point was, when
Right.
that was put in the charter.
You know, where they can say, hey, you got candidates and you're dragging your feet, so we're going to trigger a 15-day clock or a
Right.
20-day clock or something. But other than that, I think you can leave the job open until it's filled.
because if somebody,
Right.
I'll be the conspiracy theorist and the negativity person here. Somebody wants to get on a vacancy, I'm not going to fill out a talent bank because I know nobody else wants it. I'm going to wait till the 30-day clock goes there because I know they're not going to appoint me. 30 days is over, I go back to the committee, they all like me, they appoint me. That doesn't feel right either. So you got to have something that's going to be an open process no matter what. Even after the 30 days, it comes back. Because the theory being is that it is the appointing authority should be taking an action, and it's not a self-perpetuating board. So I'll talk to town council because I'm sure there's other towns that have dealt with this issue. And then if you could look at the Board of Selectmen policy and see how that...
We're trying to improve that as we speak.
Right,
Yeah.
will that work? Does that need to be improved, or do we do it all at the same time? Any other thoughts on this?
I think it makes sense to stop the clock if there are no candidates and potentially restarting the clock at the point where those candidates are clearly known. So they've submitted a talent bank form. You can't sit back and wait for the 30 days to expire. The clock stops until there's a candidate. And then, once a candidate is known, then you have 30 days in which to appoint.
And that could be very simple. We could just add another sentence saying that if there are no candidates at the 30-day point, the clock stops until the candidate becomes known.
Right.
That could be the way, then the clock starts again.
And do you want to further say a qualified candidate?
Qualified candidate.
Yeah, good point.
But I'm not sure whether that means that the appointing authority should have met with that person and disqualified them.
Yeah, and I don't know what would constitute a qualified candidate.
Right.
So this is when we get to make an issue for the next charter committee.
Right,
But you
After we've
know-
already hired and
That's right, 10 more years.
yeah, and I think, and that's the piece that's not clear is in terms of the process. It's like, okay, so yes, the appointing authority will make an appointment, but it doesn't say, like how you identify who the people are who are, because, yeah, we had a town bank form on file since November. And then, then you had two people who, at the time of the vacancy, applied or filled out talent bank forms to be interviewed, so.
I would think that Jamie's work with the Personnel Committee might, I'm not getting to the point of getting to a strict job description for every appointed position, but there ought to be at least, here's what's expected of the Conservation Commission if we're going to appoint that person. We're going to look for this, an understanding of what, an ability to communicate. What is it that's there as opposed to here's a person who said, I want to do it, just because that's an opening. I don't know anything about the committee, I don't know whether I want to do it or not, but appoint me. That doesn't feel qualified versus something else. So at the same time, we don't want to be too restrictive and say the average citizen can't get on because they don't know PhD. Going to the worst. Okay?
Right, and I only saw a conflict, well, to me, it was, personally, it was just a conflict for the committee to appoint, just because, yeah, okay, I just feel like I don't, it's not good to just have the same voice on committees.
Yeah.
I guess some committees, like the Architectural Preservation District, have specific criteria of the type of person they want on the committee. So is that a qualification?
Yeah, and that's not, actually not what they want, but that's what the bylaws
That's what the
requires.
bylaws require.
Yeah, so a craftsman, and so therefore that qualified position, if somebody came in and they work in finance, but they don't do craftsman, then I would say that's not a qualified person, right? Okay. Anything else to bring and add to the discussions? So our next meeting is September 26th. We will, Phyllis and Carl Luck will be coming to talk about what happens when there isn't a name on the ballot, voting requirements, and probably Nathan Lockwood regarding ranked choice voting. I'll see what I can get from town council on some of these questions that we have regarding the vacancies. And anything, and then we will, probably employment will probably take too much at that meeting. We might do the first meeting in October, talk about employment type things. Any other business?
I guess there was a question from the August 22nd minutes about how often the voting, the write-in issue came up. Is that something that Carl and Phyllis would address?
Yep. The other question, did the school committee talk about the elect, select, appoint the superintendent language?
Not to my knowledge, but I don't think they talked about it last week.
I thought they had talked about that previously.
So Heather said that she needed to bring it back, and I think it was when you were both here, and there was going to be a meeting that next week. She said it was on the agenda.
I don't remember that being on the agenda.
Can you go back?
I'll double check with her.
Okay. So Jim will check with what's going on with that language.
That may have been one of the meetings I missed.
Okay.
And I may not have caught it watching the video.
I will be talking to town clerk to try to get the final dates for 2019 for our calendar. Mark captured all the different dates that we talked about. We want to try, maybe at the next meeting, we can really finalize what we're going to be doing for public outreach and things like that. Any other comments?
I thought I saw, or did I see a calendar?
Okay.
Or a draft calendar of...
Yeah, the calendar was in the minutes of the August 22nd for the different dates of when we expect to have. We're going to do a special town meeting is November 13th. We'll do a status report.
Okay, that's where it is.
So that's what it is. So we're going
I
to...
saw it somewhere.
Yeah, so we're going to get that, and we're going to verify when the warrants officially closes and, or are expected to close, and other things
For
like
the
that.
spring?
For the spring.
Okay.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
At 7:54. Thank you all.
Thank you.